Welcome to the Simply Financial podcast. I'm your host, Christopher Calandra. Today I want to cover choosing a beneficiary, in particular choosing a beneficiary for your IRA and or 401ks. Selecting beneficiaries for retirement accounts is different from choosing beneficiaries for other assets. You need to be mindful of the income tax and estate tax laws. And if you ignore the impact of taxes, this can lead to mistakes and larger than necessary tax bills. And most, if not all of you listening to this, probably want to avoid that outcome. Many assets such as life insurance, bank accounts, stocks, and real estate, they usually pass to beneficiaries without income tax being due. That is not the case when we're talking about pre-tax 401ks and traditional IRAs. So again, it makes sense to consider the impact of taxes. By the way, Roth IRAs and Roth 401ks can be passed on to beneficiaries tax-free. That is one of the many reasons, in my opinion, one of the many reasons why Roth accounts are increasing in popularity quite a bit these days. First off, you should name a primary beneficiary and a contingent beneficiary on all of your retirement accounts. This is done by completing a beneficiary designation form for each account. A key tip is to make sure that you have copies of the designations that are on file with the IRA and or 401k custodian, and that the beneficiary designations are consistent with your wishes. You might have done them a long time ago and your life might have changed, marital status, children, names may change because of marriage. You just want to make sure that the beneficiary designations you've selected are consistent with your wishes. Your primary beneficiary is who is your first choice to inherit the retirement account. Now, it can be more than one beneficiary. You could name both your sister and brother as an example. You could name your mom and dad. You could name more than two individuals. You could have one person get 30% and one person get 50% and a third person get 20%. So there's a lot of flexibility, but the primary beneficiary or primary beneficiaries are who are your first choice to inherit a retirement account. The contingent beneficiary is the backup and your secondary choice as to who will inherit the retirement account if the primary beneficiaries are unavailable or if they opt not to accept the beneficiary, they may refuse to accept the inheritance. Please note that if you have no named beneficiary on an account, then your estate will inherit the assets. Now, this is not necessarily the end of the world, but it can be very problematic because of income tax liability, if applicable, because we're talking about pre-tax assets. What ends up happening if you don't have a beneficiary named and your estate then becomes the default beneficiary is that if you had $250,000 in a pre-tax 401k, no beneficiary is named, it would go to your estate. Again, not the end of the world, but that $250,000 would become immediately taxable, and the income tax, federal and state, would become due right away. This tax liability issue is also why naming your estate as the beneficiary is often not the optimal decision from a tax planning perspective. That's not to say there aren't times when it might be appropriate, but often it is problematic because of tax liability. Naming your spouse is a great choice, and of course it's very common. The reason why it's a great choice is because a spousal beneficiary has the greatest flexibility of any beneficiary, including the opportunity to delay and or spread out the tax distributions. They simply have more options at their disposal, a spouse does. And this can be part of a terrific tax plan if done right. So keep that in mind. There are special tax rules when naming a trust as a beneficiary. This is fairly common, but you want to be aware of the tax implications of naming a trust. So I think for purposes of this show, the takeaway in regards to naming a trust or trusts as beneficiaries is that you should seek some advice, especially legal advice, before designating a trust as a beneficiary. It's something you want to be careful with. There's a lot of considerations. Get some advice. It's pretty much the same thing. Naming a charity can also be complicated too, so you probably should get some advice. This is especially true if you're naming a charity along with other named beneficiaries. There's some complications that could arise on the tax planning front. So these are fairly common, trusts and charities, but you definitely want to get some professional advice. So in short, choosing a beneficiary for your IRAs and 401ks deserve some consideration, might need to get some help. I'm a certified financial planner. We work with our clients to help them select beneficiaries and work in conjunction and in coordination with estate planning and elder care attorneys. So we help clients, but it's something that you want to put some thought into, make sure it's all set up so that in an event of a crisis or an emergency, things are set up properly so that it is good for you, good for your estate, and make it as easy as possible on your loved ones and on your beneficiaries. So I appreciate you listening to today's episode. Hopefully you found it valuable. If you did, I would love it if you would subscribe to the podcast and possibly recommend it to someone you know who you think might also get value out of the content. Also know that you could go to my website, elliottwealth.com, where you could get information about me and my team and the financial planning, investment advisory work we do for our clients, trying to help them win with money and achieve their financial goals. Again, thanks for listening. I'll be back with you on the next episode of the Simply Financial podcast very soon.
The views expressed are not necessarily the opinion of SagePoint Financial Incorporated and should not be construed directly or indirectly as an offer to buy or sell any securities mentioned herein. Investing is subject to risks, including loss of principal invested. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. No strategy can assure a profit nor protect against loss. Please note that individual situations can vary. Therefore, the information should be relied upon when coordinated with individual professional advice. Please note, the information being provided is strictly as a courtesy. When you link to any of the websites provided here, you are leaving this website. We make no representation as to the completeness or accuracy of the information provided at these websites, nor is the company liable for any direct or indirect technical or system issues or any consequences arising out of your access to your use of third-party technologies, websites, information, and programs made available through this website. When you access one of these websites, you are leaving our website and assume total responsibility and risk for your use of the websites you are linking to. Securities and advisory services are offered through SagePoint Financial Incorporated, member FINRA SIPC. Insurance services offered through Elliott Wealth Management, LLC, not affiliated with SagePoint Financial.